Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, beards in the Marine Corps, our reporter joins us with the details. Also, the impact of the government's inability to pass a budget and operate on continuing resolutions. We look at the ripple effects for the defense industry and Pentagon. And we head into the B-52 tire shop to see the wheels that sustain a 185,000-pound plane. Plus, the Navy trains dolphins and other marine mammals for specialized underwater jobs. We get a look at the program as it marks its 65th anniversary. And as tank warfare rages on in Ukraine, NATO trains with U.S. Apache helicopters. We show you how they train to hunt armored vehicles. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. Could beards be coming to the Marine Corps? We get the scoop. Here with more is Marine Corps Times reporter Irene Lowenson.
The Department of the Navy has completed its long-awaited study on whether beards interfere with gas mask seals. But exactly what that will mean for sailors and Marines going forward remains unclear. The study's findings have not been disclosed, but court filings make clear that the Department of the Navy, which encompasses the Navy and the Marine Corps, is now mulling changes to unspecified aspects of its policies governing religious or medical accommodations allowing beards. Back in 2021, Navy Secretary Carlos del Toro ordered a study examining whether beards actually interfere with having a good seal on gas masks. The Department of the Navy hasn't provided many updates to the public on the status of the study, but it did provide updates in recent court filings. These filings came as part of a lawsuit by Marines who are members of the Sikh faith and want the Marine Corps to allow them to keep their religiously significant beards while in combat zones. Both the Navy and the Marine Corps generally don't allow facial hair other than mustaches. They do allow beards with some limitations for religious reasons or for service members with medical conditions like severe razor bumps. Now, the Department of the Navy is deciding whether changes to its policies for these accommodations would be operationally supportable and prudent. In a memo in December, Navy Secretary Carlos del Toro asked his staff to examine whether there should be more, quote, parity in the department's accommodation policies. The Navy declined to release the study or del Toro's memo about it, or share any updates, which means we don't really know what aspects of the two naval services policies might be brought into alignment with each other. We do know the Navy doesn't allow religious accommodations for beards aboard ships, but does allow them with some limitations on shore duty. The Marine Corps, meanwhile, generally allows religious accommodations for beards, but not in combat zones. That's according to a lawyer representing the Marines suing for greater religious accommodations. There are also some differences in the way the services handle medical accommodations. So most Marines and sailors still have to shave regularly, and even those with accommodations still face some restrictions. But that could change. We'll keep you posted. For Marine Corps Times, I'm Irene Lowenson.
With Congress unable to land a comprehensive deal to fund the government, Washington has been operating on a series of short-term continuing resolutions. But the CRs, as they're known, come with a raft of associated issues for everyone from government workers to defense contractors to the Pentagon. To take a look at the ripple effects of the issue, we were joined by Federal Times' Molly Weisner. Have a look.
For months since the fiscal year began in October, the government has been operating on a series of temporary funding measures. And while that situation results in a lot of headlines about the federal workforce, there are also impacts on the Pentagon and defense industries. Recently, Congress put forward a six-bill spending deal that would secure funding for a slate of agencies whose money is set to expire Friday, March 8th. The package includes an increase in mental health programs and homelessness prevention for the Department of Veterans Affairs. It also includes funds for military construction and family housing projects, support for infrastructure and deterrence initiatives in the Indo-Pacific Command Theater, and Arlington National Cemetery's Southern Expansion Construction Project. The stakes to get this done are high. While the Pentagon's funding won't expire for another 2 weeks, the Department of Defense and the military services have been running on funding fumes since October 1st, when fiscal 2024 began. No new money so far this year means no new contracts, a limited ability to hire critical staff, and time spent preparing for a shutdown only to be yanked back from the ledge at the last minute. 4 back-to-back continuing resolutions have kept government funded at last year's levels. And while stopgap measures have prevented a shutdown, defense leaders have said that's still no way to govern.
As you've heard, department leaders and others say continuing to operate under continuing resolutions is unsustainable and detrimental to our nation's national security interests. Notably, the absence of an appropriation bill for the fiscal year severely hampers the department's ability to plan effectively. We are already well into the fiscal year, now in our 5th month, and unfortunately find ourselves again under a 3rd continuing resolution. The fact is that this uncertainty undermines our military readiness and jeopardizes critical modernization efforts. The cumulative effect of spending years under CRs dating back to 2011 is deeply concerning. It amounts to nearly 5 years of constrained funding levels, impeding the DoD's capacity to adapt to evolving threats and innovate to maintain our competitive edge. Failure to pass a base budget for the DoD not only risks our national security, but also obstructs crucial investments in new technologies, equipment, and personnel training, which are essential for maintaining readiness and staying ahead in an increasingly complex global landscape.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also addressed the issue in a hearing before Congress recently.
I know you understand this, but one of the best things that you can do right now to support them is to pass a full-year appropriation. And doing so will ensure that our troops get paid, that our civilian employees can stay on the job, and that we can continue to procure and field the very best capabilities to defend our country. We need the flexibility and stability that full-year appropriations provide.
Even if Congress passes its initial minibus, a shutdown for the Defense Department and others isn't yet off the table. In the event of a lapse in funding, service members may keep working without a paycheck until funding is restored. And they're not legally guaranteed back pay the way that their civilian counterparts are, but Congress in the past has fast-tracked laws making sure that they got paid before previous shutdowns. More than 400,000 Defense Department civilians would be at risk of furloughs. Military moves could be limited or delayed if they're not deemed essential to mission. The impacts on contractors and their workforces are not as clearly quantified, but anecdotally, they told us that a shutdown makes it difficult for them to plan long-term. And smaller businesses with less of a financial cushion may find themselves disproportionately affected the longer a shutdown goes on. And whereas federal employees are guaranteed back pay by law, contractors are not, even if they're forced to stop work. For now, how things will shake out on Capitol Hill is anyone's guess, and the clock doesn't stop. The president's budget request for fiscal year 2025 is expected to drop March 11th.
Don't go anywhere. When we return, we take on tires, B-52 style. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. The B-52 bomber is one of the Air Force's oldest planes, and also one of the largest. During a recent trip to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, we got a look at the wheel and tire shop for a big portion of the B-52 fleet, and spoke to some of the airmen responsible for keeping the Stratofortress rolling.
Whenever we get a wheel from the flight line, we first come in through these garage doors on this side over here. We bring it over to our bead breaker. Our bead breaker separates the wheel from the tire. So basically it brings in, compresses it, makes an audible pop. Sometimes it's really loud, sometimes it's not. I've had it where they'll next door come and be like, "You okay?" That's how loud these pops can be sometimes. Whenever that is finished, we roll it over to our breakdown cage. We have 2 individuals on each side, one on the front, one on the back. They tear it apart. They take all the bolts out and separate all the hardware. Make sure it's pretty much bare. From there, we bring it over to our wheel washer over here. This can fit 2 wheel halves at any given time. It runs at about 160 degrees. We run it for about 35 minutes. This is the inside. If we do inspect it and it does pass an inspection and it's good to be rebuilt, You roll it back over here to we call the build-up area. This is where we will mate the two wheel halves together. We'll put all the hardware back on it, put it on this jig right here, and we'll pretty much mate both sides of the tire. When that's all done, put it up to our air machine. This airs the tires up to 315 PSI. When it's aired up, we roll it out. We put it on a leak check for 24 hours. If it passes, we'll throw the bearings in it, which are like inside there, and then we'll send it out to flightline. This is a ultrasonic parts washer. We used to do all the bolts by hand. We used to wash every single bolt by hand, one by one. This can do about, I want to say, a day, 270 bolts a day. You'll put your tray full of bolts, brake keys, major hardware on this. So if you do like clean, it will do this for about 5 minutes, up and down. And then it will sit in there and you'll hear like a hissing noise. And it's actually the bubbles, ultrasonic bubbles coming and cleaning all the debris off. These are all dirty right now, but the bolts that come out of it, you could rub your hand on it. You're not getting any sort of dirt or debris on your hand at all. So before they go in like really dirty, greasy and all that, and they come out looking perfect.
Why is it important for the wheels to be in tip-top shape?
It's important because if the wheel has a damage on it, it can break on the flight line itself. So if a plane or the jet comes down too hard, the wheel could crack more and that can cause severe damage. So it's really up to us to make sure that these wheels are no damage, no defects, ready to go.
Now, onto the water. This year marks the 65th birthday of the Navy's Marine Mammal program, which has for decades trained dolphins and other sea mammals to detect undersea mines and other dangers. But at the program's headquarters in Point Loma outside of San Diego, researchers are seeking to better understand a dolphin's intricate biological sonar with the hope of one day taking this understanding and developing better Navy systems. Navy Times editor Jeff Zazulowicz recently visited the Point Loma facility to learn more about what these dolphins and their researchers are up to.
The Navy's Marine Mammal program turns 65 this year, and over the decades, the program's work has involved training dolphins to spot underwater mines and other hazards, while teaching sea lions how to help attach recovery lines to items sitting in the murky depths. But a recent Navy Times visit to the program's Point Loma, San Diego headquarters reveals far more work going on within the program, which falls under the Naval Information Warfare Center Command. On a recent bright February morning, the dolphins swam together, cavorted, and regularly jumped out of the water as the program's director, Dr. Mark Zitko, explained what the Marine Mammal program does and has contributed to marine life studies over all these years.
The program started in '59 with one dolphin, and there was always a science inspiration for the program. The original desire was to study how fast dolphins can swim to try and improve ship performance or torpedo performance. Early on, we learned that the animals would make great underwater assistance to Navy and Marine Corps personnel, and that's really what we've been doing ever since. But that original science inspiration has never left the program. We train Navy animals to do simple things under extraordinary circumstances. For them, detecting enemy divers and swimmers or UUVs or enemy mines, finding the target is easy. The animals are natural hunters. We just change what they're hunting for.
In addition to training dolphins to help point out underwater hazards for sailors, much of the program's work has also involved advancing veterinary care to help both the Navy and other human handlers take better care of these animals, Zitko said. And then there is the eternal mystery of the dolphin's exquisite biological acoustics, a sonar array that modern man has yet to successfully replicate in any machine.
The animals are acoustic creatures. From the beginning, we've studied their biological sonar, which is still order of magnitude or better than the best electronics that we've got going.
In a way, the folks at Point Loma hope their research will one day put them out of a job and retire dolphins from the Navy's arsenal of assets.
The Navy's policy is We want to replace our marine mammals and our marine mammal systems as soon as technology is available to do that. And for one mission in particular, that's already happened. So the dolphins used to have a job to do, and now our underwater vehicles are doing that job. And that's mine hunting for bottom and moored mines in shallow water under favorable conditions. So that's an example of where we followed our guidance. We actually had the animals doing a job, technology got there, had a smooth transition. Some of the same personnel switched from working with the dolphins to working with the vehicles.
Still, Zitka warned that undersea drone communications are far more difficult than their airborne counterparts, and that dolphins will likely lead the way for some time to come.
The challenge is it's really hard. And we all see all the amazing things that happen with aerial drones. There's so much about how we communicate and navigate in the air that's so much easier than doing it underwater. So it's just going to take more time than I think some folks imagine that it might. It's coming, but there are jobs that the animals do that we don't think they're going to be replaced for decades.
The program also studies the hearing systems of animals like dolphins to better understand how the Navy's operations, both above and below the surface, impact these animals. But the work of a Navy dolphin is not confined to the sprawling enclosures at Point Loma, and Zico said that can present some challenges. Stated simply, dolphins struggle with being transported, so much of the work here involves training them to be comfortable with such disruptions and being taken out of the water.
What we do that's unique, though, is we go out in the ocean to do our stuff, and we go to lots of different oceans, not just here. So it's the traveling part that's hard. Getting a dolphin to be comfortable with being transported in trucks, on ships, airplanes, helicopters, going different places, that's the challenge. And there's no way we can rush it, because at the end of everything we do, we release the animals and rely on them to be cooperative partners with us out in the ocean.
What do you think are some of the misconceptions folks outside of the military or whatever might have about the work you guys do here?
We have a Secretary of the Navy instructions, and it's all about the care of the Navy's animals. And it says the Navy's animals will be provided the highest quality care. Not high care, pretty good care, within budget care, highest quality care. And that's been the Navy's position throughout the entire history of the program. It is a tough job that we're doing, but we don't do anything on the backs of the animals. And that we have that support through the highest level of the Navy and DoD. I think right now we have about 120 animals. I've got a staff of about 16 veterinarians, so that's a pretty good patient-doctor ratio. But really, it's the animal care and training staff. They're the first line of defense. They're looking at how is this animal moving today? How's he responding? Does she look the way that they normally do? And if not, one of our veterinarians comes down and takes a look. All of our animals are trained to participate in their own health care. They sit still and let us look at every orifice and body part. And the Navy invented that. Back in the 60s, we were the first ones to train a dolphin to voluntarily give a blood sample from its fluke, sit still calmly for that. And then we sort of spread that philosophy throughout the marine mammal community. And then marine mammal trainers spread it throughout the zoological community and even into our domestic pets. I heard a radio story the other night about pediatricians wanting to use the exact same techniques we use to get our marine mammals comfortable with blood draws and these things. We should be doing this with children. And it's talking about how for many young children there's fear of needles, right? How it can last a lifetime. And if medical doctors had the good sense that veterinarians and marine mammal trainers had, we could cut all that off at the pass.
In Point Loma, San Diego, this is Jeff Zazulowicz for Navy Times.
When we return, our personal finance expert has tips for you on the best way to save in the military. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, personal finance expert Jeanette Mack shows you the best ways to save in the military.
Military life comes with some big responsibilities. At the same time, it offers opportunities for growth, not just professionally, but financially as well. Whether you're just starting or have been in for years, it's never too early or too late to develop the kind of habits that make for great money management and building wealth. You probably know your service gets you discounts and perks, but did you know that many retailers and restaurants don't always broadcast their discounts? Always ask and show your military ID whenever you're pulling out your wallet. You might just save some money. And speaking of saving, that's how you build wealth. Save, 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 which means you can't spend. Overspending gets you in trouble and can even cost you in fees and late charges. So don't spend more than you earn. Always know where your money is going and stick to a smart budget. Your military paycheck makes it easier for you than in other jobs because housing and other costs are sometimes paid for, and you have opportunities to make extra money while on active duty. Be smart. Stack those bonuses and specialty pay. Put that money on auto deposit into your savings account, and you'll see just how fast a cushion builds. Make the most of your military life and your paycheck, and you'll set yourself up for success, professionally and financially.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, take your finger away from that big red launch button and check out militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to be the linguist with the most to say, sign up for our early bird brief, compiled each morning to bring you the most up-to-date headlines. It's also in audio. Check out the podcast version out each weekday. And if social media is where you collect open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. And like most junior service members, we're on TikTok, so go find us there as well. Stick around. There's more Defense News Weekly after the break. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. If you're fighting the USA on a battlefield, one of the scariest sights you can see is an AH-64 Apache coming right at you. But once you see it, it might be too late. We take you to Germany, where NATO troops are training with the American warbird. Part scout, part flying tank, the Apache's job is to fly low and fast, sneak behind enemy lines, and use a combination of advanced sensors and bruising firepower to foil attacks before they happen. Meet the US Army's tank hunters in Europe. The Apache helicopters, based in Germany, are on a mission to train alongside NATO's allies, deter aggression, and, if necessary, defend the alliance against attack. Heavily armed but thinly armored, the Apache must fly low and fast, using speed and surprise to gain the upper hand. This takes a very special kind of pilot.
Everyone is always challenging each other to be better pilots. A little bit contentious, it can be a little bit aggressive in how we engage with and talk to each other, but at the end of the day, we're all there for the same mission. We're all there to accomplish that mission.
The Apache is a two-pilot job. The backseater flies the helicopter, while the front-seater operates the Apache's weapon systems, including the 30mm chain gun, which the pilot can aim just by turning their head. The Apache may be a flying arsenal, but it's equally valuable as a scout. The radar dome is capable of detecting ground targets and relaying that information to other units. The 12th Combat Aviation Brigade serves as a crucial part of NATO's response forces. To stay sharp, they participate in several multinational exercises every year.
We train with NATO forces, and we stand ready to respond to any threats to the NATO alliance.
That's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.